And we're on, Mr. Lukey. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks,
Everybody, welcome
Johnny.
to the Higher Jiu Jitsu podcast. We've got a episode, I don't know, 21 or 22 of the stories, and we got none other than Mr. Luke Whiffen on the other side. How you going, Luke?
Good, Johnny. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, man. Funny times, that's for sure. I think we're in the 10th or 11th week of a Sydney-wide lockdown. Um, how you been? How's things? How have things been?
Oh, it's been different, which is always, you know, brings challenges. I think it's been good. Like I spent a lot more time with my family. I don't have 2 hours commute a day, um, so that's been good. And we've got the family's got into a good groove. The thing that just I think unsettles me is just the unknown. Like, when's it going to end? What's it going to look like? What does it mean for everyone's jobs? Um, so that's just sort of uneasy, I think, and it's a tension that everyone's got. But other than that, it's been really great weather. I spend probably 14 hours a day away from home, um, and I haven't had to do that, so it's been good. And I was a bit, I was querying how I was going to work from home and that, but it's all run really smoothly. So there's been a lot of benefits.
There you go. So I guess out of necessity, like solutions will come up. And I think there have been some good things. So as we get into it, tell us a little bit about the Jits journey and how you came across jiu-jitsu. We've had this chat a couple times, um,
Mm.
but how have you gotten to this point right now with
I
jits?
Well, I was always into my martial arts. I started Taekwondo when I was 7, and you know, we paid enough money, and I got my black belt when I was about 14. Um, competed a bit there. Um, Always loved my martial arts. Always been sort of a competitive person. Love my competitive sports. Played a lot of sports. Um, then got a job, had kids, and that sort of changed everything. Tried to get into it when I was about 34, um, but I just couldn't squeeze it around my job because it's quite an intense job. Um, couldn't keep the consistency up. It's funny. I was worried. The first question I asked him when I started jiu-jitsu was at 34. Like, am I too old for this? It's looking back now, it's a bit of a funny question. And then sort of dropped out, and then uh, my eldest, my boy, thought, actually, it was before then. I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu, so it was about 35 before I had a go at jiu-jitsu. I wanted to get him into martial arts, and I sort of had not a great experience with the taekwondo. So I thought, I'll get him into judo, not really knowing anything about jiu-jitsu. But the problem was that all the judo schools had kind of folded around our area. And one day I was at a barbecue with the parents from school, and I said, I've been looking to put my boy into for judo, but there's no judo schools around anymore. And the guy said, "Oh, look, I do jujitsu. Um, I'm a blue belt. Why don't you bring him down to Anthony Lang's gym?" So, well, okay, I'll take him down and put him into jujitsu. I was like, what the hell is this thing? Um, and really loved it, and then tried to get into myself again. And then, like I said, um, I just couldn't manage to squeeze it in. But my son did it and continued to do it. And for about 5 or 6 years, I watched him do it. Took him down there on Saturdays, and was champing at the bit to get in. Um, then the kids just got a little bit older and a little bit easier, and I had a little bit more time. And so I dove into it down at the local gym down at Reef. But once again, being time poor, that their class is on at sort of 5 or 6 o'clock. I can't make it back from the city to the northern beaches by 6. So I thought, oh, I've got to find somewhere in the city, and tried a few places, and you know, shopped around and had a look at a few, and landed Higher Jiu Jitsu, and it was a place for me.
I remember that. I remember exactly what happened that day because I walked into the dojo with Big Phil, and I think it was Roger or maybe it was Sava. But anyways, and I saw you, a new student, in the corner there having a little warm up, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And Phil doesn't seem like the most gentle man when you first look at him, right? Uh,
Yeah.
um, but there you were. I think we did a class. Was it Phil that sold you on it, or what? Was it that first class?
Um, well, I think I took a little while to be sold on it because I was reserving my judgment. I'd been to a few schools, and they weren't. I don't think they were really supervised really well, and they didn't. It was just sort of turn up, train. We'll put someone who may or may not be experienced with you. I think like the first place I tried, I had someone in guard, and he picked me up and just slammed my head. He just slammed me,
It's called a
and
power bomb, right? That's a very effective
yeah,
move in
yeah.
WWE.
Well, it'd work out in the street, wouldn't it? Work out in the street, right?
It's
But
self defense, right? Isn't that what we're doing?
yeah, and it wasn't so much that that was I got frightened or it hurt too much or whatever, but it was like it was pretty wild. Um, and another time I just got sort of thrown on my head, and um, it, I just queried whether that going forward was going to be a good thing, right? And also that was just one example of perhaps how that you weren't getting the proper uh, care and you know um, structure that you probably needed. So, like I've told you before, I turned up, and I think Phil and his guys were there first, and Phil's Phil's his gigantic guy with this big biky beard, and the guys he brought from Melbourne were all tatted up, and I just thought, oh shit,
Here we go.
here we go. And I think I got to have a roll with you pretty much straight away. And then just it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that it was a really well run school where you get looked after, and um, get taught really well, rather than just left to sort of not completely learn it by your own devices, but there wasn't as much focus.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Tell me, like, we'll go back a little bit. And when your eldest boy was training, you said it took you a few years to actually get into it for yourself, even though you'd had previous martial arts experience, and there probably
Mm.
was a little bit of you that did want to jump on. What was preventing you from jumping on in the first place? Like, what was the cause for that delay?
Oh, it's hard. Like I suppose it's a time thing, but you can manage your time. It's just a matter. I think it was just a matter of whether I felt like I didn't know how much I'd get out of it, so I didn't know how much effort I wanted to put into managing my time.
Mm.
Also, um, uh, it's a little bit confronting as well to sort of to join, and I don't the places that I originally tried it back when I had my first stint at 35, because this was sort of 40, 41, actually about 41, 42 that I started again, and you really just got
So that was about 6, 7 years since the first stint.
yeah. And the
Okay.
first one, the first one, I just remember being completely confused. There wasn't. So this is what we're doing, and what you want to do is pin someone, because then you can in a self defense you can hold them, you can throw punches, you're safe. So I didn't understand the concepts and the objects of it, and like this is a sweep because you want to be on top. It was kind of just there. It is, figure it out. And also, it could be hot. It was another gym that I went to was very highly competitive. Like it was a bit of a lion's den, um, which um, yeah, it just makes it a little bit intimidating. So I think after after you've been practicing for sort of any length of time, you get the concept and you go, that's what it's about, and it seems so simple, but I think when you first start, you forget how strange it is. And also, I hadn't watched any really UFC or anything like that.
Okay.
Um, so I think if I had watched UFC and had a look at sort of how to use it and got a better conceptual knowledge of it, it would have been easier. But yeah, it's a bit intimidating, a bit confusing. Yeah.
Hmm. So you said like, so after a while, so that's what it's about. So what is it about then after these many years?
I think it's changed. Definitely.
Okay.
I think it's
How has that
changed.
changed?
Um, well, I guess when you're first starting, you're just trying to not um, get wiped out. You're fighting. And you're
Yeah.
using everything you can that which is normally push and shove and
Not mu-
pull and push and breathe
yeah.
hard. And I used to get psyched up to go to jiu-jitsu when I was early white belts. Stage like be getting like some snakes. So I'd have lots of glucose and to work and having a massage so I could actually move to train and you know um, and now it's I'm not have to psych up for a class or um, I'm trying to learn different things. Like I don't know what I was trying to do before, whether I was trying to be a champion or something. I don't know. I don't know why it wasn't painfully obvious I was never going to be like a world champion or anything like that. So much less of the fight. I think you start to define more of what you actually get out of it, um, and you can understand more what you can get out of it, and you can understand your limitations, and you've got more of an idea of where you're going to go long term rather than this sort of frenzy to sort of you know survive, not survive, but survive in that sort of grappling sense. Um, so yeah, it's a lot different, and I think I got a lot more respect for how complex it is and how hard it is. Not that I didn't respect it before, I just didn't understand it. And if you don't understand it, it's very hard to respect it, right? Because you don't know what it is.
It's an interesting one, because who are you to understand it as well? Like you've come in off the street, you're a white belt. Okay, you had a little bit of prior Taekwondo experience, but no one's really sat you down to say, this is what we're doing here. All you see from an uneducated eye is people having a rumble. And you're like, oh, I used to do that with my mates back in school,
Yeah,
and I used to do it with my brothers and sisters back in the day. So, oh, I could do this. This is great. So, you have the tools that any athletic middle-aged man would have, and you take those onto the battlefield, which is the mats, and there you go. You're grappling. You're doing the thing. You're doing the jiu-jitsu. But it's funny how long it takes to actually develop the skills to be able to do the jiu-jitsu in a way that um, resembles jiu-jitsu. But there's definitely something different between the uneducated rumbles in the backyard, and the thing that we call jiu-jitsu right now. And it's an interesting journey to go from one step to the other. That's for sure. How long you been training now, Luke?
oh, sort of 6 7 years now. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So what's been one like major change you've had in this past 6 years? Like what's one thing that kind of is highlighted in your mind with regards to not just your development of the skills that we're talking about, but your skills off the mats as well? Like how has your practice of jits on the mats in these 6 years contributed to your development of yourself off the mats?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Because you, you do jujitsu for a reason, and if jujitsu can, help you get better just generally, um, it's massive, isn't it? It's not like just purely doing an exercise to say just get fit, although you'll learn things through that as well. But yeah, so it's a really good question, and I've always tried to get that extra bit out of it. But I think I've learnt it's been a good tool amongst other tools for just self realization in terms of what makes you tick and how understanding yourself. Because if you don't understand that, well, how do you adjust things? How do you change things for the better? If you don't know really what makes you tick, I think, and there's numerous sort of things I think that I've it's sort of helped me with in that respect. But like I remember, uh, you know, uh, doing that white belt sort of push and pull phase where you use a lot of effort and sort of the fight phase. And then when I got to blue
Hmm.
belt and trying to work on my defenses, and I'd kind of shut down, like Phil says, I lock myself in the car and sort of
Hmm.
and ball up, the classic go to turtle or and not actively try and escape. And I thought, it's just the same thing, that it's fight or flight, you know. Um, and even though I'd sort of changed how I approached those situations, it was still me reacting emotionally and how I would either, hit out or ball up. And so it's the same sort of pattern. Even though you get more advanced, you've got those patterns. And I thought that's a really stubborn thing to deal with because you could progress through your belts theoretically, and just find better ways of balling up or better ways of fighting and attacking, right? But the best way to deal with that properly and get my jits better, I had to understand the situations. I had to apply a technique. I had to understand my body structure and my mechanics. And that's kind of like out in life, if you're always just either fighting or flighting or just reacting emotionally, probably what's best is to sit down and figure out what's the mechanics of that situation, what's the technique of dealing with it, and that helps you break out of that sort of pattern and actually gives you real progress rather than just getting better at your old tricks. And so I guess that's one of the things that it taught me is that I need to actually go beyond my comfort zone and what I know and get better at the things that jiu-jitsu in itself can teach me. And just trying to apply that ever so slightly, it's really hard. um,
Hmm.
to actually go, what's the problem here? What have I got to do to get around this? Where have I been just doing the same old things and getting the same old results? So that was a big one for me. I don't pretend that I've made huge leaps and bounds in it, but at least it's, you know, you start clawing your way forward and making some progress there.
Uh, Man, I think you have made a lot of definitely made leaps and progressed in leaps and bounds in the times that we've seen. It's just really funny to think that in different modes of jiu-jitsu, sometimes with the fight or flight, sometimes if you get better at balling up and doing the things that come naturally to you, you might get better at the sport. You might start winning medals like that. I mean, I remember for me when I first started as a white belt, and I went into my first couple of competitions with a bit of like a laid back attitude, like I'm just gonna jump on and participate and see how we go. And it didn't really work for me at the time. Like I'd lose first match, second match, and I was getting upset. I was like, I want to come into these competitions and win. So okay, so then I had to kind of refine my approach to it, and then come in like a bit more of like a pit bull mentality, where won't accept no for an answer. I had to be first, as my teacher would say all the time, and that garnered success right there. So, but the difference was that I feel like I was getting more stubborn and more tenacious, and perhaps less adaptable. And funnily enough, like that's white belt competition, and that's, I guess, kind of what white belt competition values and kind of rewards. It's just tenacity in a way. Whereas the more you do it, the more you realize that you have to actually, it's not really fight or flight. You actually have to feel things at the time, and respond according to the stimulus, according to what's coming at you. So you're constantly changing. You're not persisting at all. Like you're more than that. You're adapting yourself to the situation at hand. And it might seem as though, when you do that, there might be a little bit less success initially, but you're building more foundational kind of structures in order to build your learning and to progress, and become a better grappler for having known these, like for having worked through these principles,
But and
if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. But does it come around to, because I've also found that, I had to sort of almost go a bit floppy and get that out of my system a little bit, and then I kind of
Get what out of your system?
just the over gripping, the fighting, you know.
What is that?
Well, it's that tension, that
Hmm.
reaction, um, that white belt fight, but it's kind of a good thing as well, isn't it? Because I kind of went a bit floppy, and then I had to try and incorporate it back, because I found it very hard. Like, it was like I had to dull down everything. So I kind of went dull in the head as well. And it was a matter of getting that energy and tenacity to be focused and properly used to sort of follow the mechanics or the technique. And yeah, I don't think that it it's kind of a bad thing when it's not directed. But if you can, uh, do you find that, is there a part that we have to work on, where do we have that tenacity? Is there a use for it?
Isn't this the beauty of like this learning process,
Mm,
really? Because you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
exactly.
You're not
Yeah.
saying, okay, I'm gonna completely lose my willpower and my fight to win, or my fight to get things done, and I'm just gonna become a flop. I'm just gonna, be a doormat for everybody. Whoever wants to tap me, whoever wants to take positions, whoever wants to take my arms or take anything, like, off, like, not to do with jiu-jitsu as well, but um, understanding when to apply pressure and when to back off. And there's always like a, yin and yang, right? So like there's always like a, either go or stay, or fight or flight, as we're talking about right now. Um, I do really find that interesting, the fact that there are different modes. What's helped you more than anything? What mode, if you like, what helps you learn? What puts you in the best position to learn? How have you improved on your experience of jiu-jitsu? And that goes with, learning new skills, and that goes, of course, with like injuries as well. How do you approach your training for the maximum utility, for the most enjoyment from it in your past 6 years? Like, what have you learned in terms of directing your energies in training?
I, a couple of things. is I think you learn to trust the process. Like you see
Well,
it,
that's a big one.
you see it, you see it get results. So it's very hard to do something if you don't know if it's going to work, right? So you see, oh, okay, gee, that worked a lot better, you know. Um, I'm probably enjoying it. I think you've got to enjoy it. You know, you've got to
Have
enjoy.
you always enjoyed it?
You know, I keep waiting for that moment where I'm going to go. I'm going to get that little sinking feeling that uh, I'm over it, or I don't like it, or it's too much, and I'm scared of.
I'm waiting for it too.
It's like I'm going to wake up and it's going to happen, and I just haven't had it. You know,
Hmm.
and to converse, I just have so many times where I just go, oh, that was so great. That was just so great, and I'll be buzzing, and you know, or you'll even get swept effortlessly, or you'll sweep someone effortlessly, or someone will put on a snap like a really sweet armbar, and you just go, "Oh, that's so great," you know, or you'll do it, you know. So yeah, the fact that it's enjoyable and I get a lot out of it. Even if I get tapped and I don't necessarily like it at the time, I kind of I got tapped just before I get tapped lots of times, but there was one particular time and it was really sort of stinging, and I just thought, um, oh, that's great. I've got something in my life that means something to me. Like like I'm not just
Does
drunk.
it hurt that much,
Well,
right?
yeah, it was like, oh, that mattered, you know. And we all want things that matter
Uh-huh.
in our life, and I just I went from going, oh, that no to, oh, that's great. But yeah, so enjoyment, meaning, that's helped me learn because it's a reward. But also, I think you've got to have the right people around you because you see them do it or you feel them in a role and you see
Hmm.
what they do and you see the value in it and you see it work. And so you need to have good training partners. You need to have people that are going to coach you that you look up to, and you trust what they're doing. And I've been lucky to have a few people like that as well. So yeah, I get a lot out of the people around me that are headed in the right direction. Um, I guess that's what I didn't like about those other schools in the city that I tried. That you know, I didn't feel like they were not that they were bad or anything like that. They just weren't for me. Um, so just having that support and role models around you, yeah, and enjoying it.
They're two very, very big parts of the equation there. So, what do you want around you? So, what do you see in people around you? Let's say coaches, or even like students, more experienced students. What do you want in a coach in order to feel like you're learning and getting better and getting your money's worth? And what makes you think that it's this process is worth devoting your time and energy to?
Oh, just yeah, I think being the people around you being at a level that they're going to show you stuff that you didn't see. Um,
Hmm.
that they're there to teach perhaps more than just jujitsu. Um, that they're there to look after the people around them. They're not just turning up to roll over the arm or I guess have an expression of themselves that I don't identify with or value because it's very much it's a community, um,
Yeah.
uh, and you kind of got to be. it's good to have people on the same page. Like I, I, if I was younger, if I was like 25 and so on, I might be looking for a different thing, and I might want to turn up to a more combative place. Maybe
Hmm.
not. I don't think that that means I'd necessarily be smarter or wiser being younger. Um, but um, yeah, just people that are turning up with the same attitude, and that
Hmm.
want to develop, aren't necessarily there just to win a role. Although I like it when people try to win a role. It's great. I mean, it's like that sort of you just don't be a flop, and you've got to have a channeled assertiveness. But
Yeah.
it's good, but I guess it's just how it looks.
Hmm. Uh, I, it's really cool, man. I think you you were talking about community, and what is a community? It's, as you said again, like-minded people for sure. And I guess with like-minded people, it's people that you can trust. I think trust is just so important as
Yeah, it's
well
big.
because you're there to learn from them for sure. But if you were training with a bunch of monsters on the mats, but you couldn't trust them, then what kind of good is that, right? So, interesting points you raise, and I think that's the beautiful idea, the thing of a dojo. Of we've said in our blog beforehand, like the third place is full of people that you're happy to hang out with, and that you think you can learn from, and that you want to learn from, and that challenge you and push you to get better and better. And I think if as people look to find their own little nest, that's a big part of what they're looking for. And a lot of the times, no matter whether one school performs better in competitions or not, a lot of times people find themselves super happy um, and proud of their academy, and proud to represent the place that they train at. And I think it's for that reason. It's the fact that we develop such close connections with each other because we are grappling each other. We spend lots of time together for sure, but we also trade, as gross as it sounds, we trade lots of sweat. And we like our emotions kind of transfer, and like I make you feel certain things, and you make me frustrated sometimes when you keep passing from half guard or something like that. um, there's just so many experiences that we have together, and I think that's such a beautiful bond, of the dojo and all of the students that form that, which is really really
Can
cool.
I ask you a question? So with how do you balance up that? Obviously, it's a complex thing. It's a difficult thing. All these different emotions and all these different needs and so on. But we're also a combat sport, right? So and and you would never want to think. It's great to have a do you have to sacrifice any of that nurturing to be good at the combat of it?
um, it's such an interesting question, and it's one that I'm always pondering, at least when we're on with jiu-jitsu, and I'm still pondering it now. But um, it's a combative martial art, and at the same time we have people like you that are in the school that have important jobs to do, and have families to go home to, and aren't at the point in time where they want to become world champions at in this sport, where they are doing it for reasons other than than like competition success. So I don't think it's a matter of sacrificing one thing for the other. I think it's creating the it's just building skills. I feel like it's taken a like not emphasizing. I do my best not to emphasize the will, and to emphasize more of the skill.
Mm.
um Will is necessary, but sometimes it's you sacrifice the technique for like when it becomes harder, you need that bit of will. But from a teacher's point of view, I'm just trying to share this like the skill. And so if everybody's trying to improve on their skill, then everyone can meet in that same common ground. Whereas if someone's trying to push for, like for example, like a competition on the weekend, and they're going up against you who's coming in twice a week for a nice friendly grapple here and there, then I guess your intentions aren't aligned, and that's when there's a little bit of conflict. Whereas if you and this competitor come in and both of your goals are to get better at the art, at your reactions, at your technique, um, then everything else from that is surplus. And that said competitor can go with another young willing competitor, and they can have a grapple to the death. But they've still learned when they've trained with you, and they've respected you. They trust you, you trust them. So I don't think you have to sacrifice, if I'm honest. Like I think it's just more a matter of becoming aware of how you're practicing it in order to get better at it.
Yeah, well,
Does that?
yeah, well, no, because I think it was a bit of a sort of a leading question because it isn't it's sort of counterintuitive, but it's been my experience that you don't have to give up that um, excellence in the combative sense because I've been in a comp in the last couple of years, been in a couple, and with my new sort of mindset, and I think I've been better. Um, I
Yes.
think my last two, um, I was in the the normal people's one, not the old people's one, because no one turned up for my one,
Yeah.
and and um,
Yeah.
and they both gassed um,
Uh huh.
because they had that tension. They had me in about you know 99% locked up subs, um, which my son thought was pretty funny because I just kept going from one extremely dangerous position to the next and nearly losing. But I was a lot more relaxed. I could feel my way out into the escapes, and I didn't blast my energy, and I ended up winning those two matches, and they were from a much more combative school. So it's a beautiful thing where you can get the right place. Um, as far as how I feel, and you still can have the excellence at the combative side.
Man, it's a beautiful thought. It's a beautiful idea because I honestly think that we're a self defense school. Our first focus is self defense. So when a student comes in, they're going to learn, how to defend a very basic choke. When someone who doesn't do jiu-jitsu, they're going to defend. They're going to learn how to deal with somebody who doesn't do jiu-jitsu first before they learn to deal with somebody who does jiu-jitsu. At least that's the kind of the priority um, of the school. And a lot of the times, I think maybe some people might get it wrong um, that we don't enjoy the combative side, but I think that's the furthest from the truth because with our self defense mindset, we can make the competition side so much better as well because we're delving in on the principles of jiu-jitsu, and that's the most important part of it, the principles. So how do we adapt whilst using as little effort as possible to maximize the results that you get back from it? And I think you can take that mentality um, into whatever field, and you're still going to be learning. And that's how what Master Sawa says to us. Like, how do we bring jiu-jitsu to as many people as possible? And so what we do is we adapt these principles and we create like progressions for them as well. So when you adapt the principle as a white belt, it's just in the basic technique in the Upa bridge and roll. Let's say someone's on top of me. This is the adversity of someone just sitting on top of me, trying to show me the technique. Whereas progressively as you start grappling, then somebody's on top in mount that doesn't want to get thrown off, and that also wants to take your arm and wants to take your neck, and slowly, you really refine how you adapt to what's coming your way. And I think the biggest part of that is also learning how that applies off the mats as well. So that tension we that tends to naturally appear, how do you become aware of that and like not so much kind of stop it, but work with it in order to get to a favorable result. So when you're in court, for example, or someone's doing their everyday job, and these natural tensions start to kick in. If I'm driving a car and someone cuts me off, and I really want to get mad, and that tension starts to develop in my hands and in my jaw, and I start screaming and wanting to swear at the person, but there's an ability, there's a part of my brain that recognizes that, and it's like, oh, hold on, John, this is probably a bit of wasted energy right now. Let me think about how I'm responding to this situation, and I'll have a quick think about it, and I'll realize that that's wasted energy, and there's a better way. So I might just kind of put my hand up and say sorry to the guy, whatever, and just drive off. So I think mindfulness is a big part of it. Becoming aware of yourself is ultimately what we're doing through this whole thing. If I know, I think it's a bit roundabout of an answer, but um, I think awareness is just absolutely critical to this whole process. And whether we're doing it for competition or for weight loss or to learn self defense, I think the biggest prize we get out of this process of learning jiu-jitsu is this idea of awareness, and specifically that, like that tension in your body, that effort that you may or may not know that you're exuding, how to channel that and put it in a better way.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. Because nothing does it like jujitsu. Because there's something like you spend your whole life uh, like trying to not um, put yourself under in bad positions, you know. Um, and in jujitsu, when you've got someone who's literally trying to kill you, like if you don't tap,
Yeah.
there's something about that reptilian part of your brain that fires up that doesn't quite understand that it's just a play, it's just a game, right? And so it sparks up all those deep fears and emotions in you, and the fact that you get to replicate that situation, at differing degrees, ever so slightly to major threat, and you get to replicate that and put yourself in that position in a safe environment and learn from it, is something that you don't get to do out in the real world, because normally someone's threatening your job, or you know you know uh, cutting you off in traffic, or something like that. It's you don't get a second chance at it sometimes. you know you can make a bad decision in your job, and that can turn your whole life or your career in a different direction. And it can be life and death out there. But jiu-jitsu, you get to practice that situation again and again and again and again and again, and refine it and think about it. Is it fight or flight? What am I doing wrong? How am I reacting? Is it the same pattern? Who am I? Do I really react like that all the time? Am I someone who balls up under pressure? Do I want to be that person? And it's a nice, safe um, place that you can repeat that situation and learn from it.
Yeah. So with that being said, then, um, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced on the mats?
Um, it's the I suppose it's the complexity of it. Um, I think emotionally, if I throw back sort of 2 years ago, um, just keeping my emotions in check. I think just being familiar with it probably helps. I don't think I've adjusted a whole heap. Um, I don't. It's hard to kind of look at it that way because I've just enjoyed it so much. Like I suppose what an enjoying
Yeah,
challenge. I think it's the mechanics. It's trying to integrate that into what I do, um, and understand the right way to move. Like understand what a frame is. Like I still don't when I wrestle. Like I still don't kind of really, just instead of pushing someone away, framing and moving. And that sounds really simple, and probably a lot of people get that at white belt stage. But those sort of things, learning to use my core, getting my legs involved. Um, but yeah, just the making the mechanics more second nature, so that I feel like that's the proper way to move, and that's a good. I feel good when I move that way.
that's a big one. And maybe that's a challenge for you, perhaps due to like before you started jiu-jitsu, maybe where your body is at now, um, and maybe like the previous injuries that you had kind of contribute to you, and the mechanics, you wanting to make the mechanics better. I think the fact that you're a smart guy and the kind of the complexity really clicks for you as well. Like you extract that out of the process when you didn't really. Some people maybe don't really think about it like that. Um, you have a really nice definition, or at least understanding of this idea of anti-fragile. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because we always talk about it during our sessions, and I'm fascinated to hear more.
Oh, that's Nassim Talib's idea that um, there are certain class of things that improve with disorder or gain from chaos. So, like evolution's a really basic example. Um, you scramble genes, you put out variations, and the fittest survive, and it gets better. So, from that randomness of how genes are assembled and transmitted, um, it gets better. So those type of systems, like a free market, right? A free market is something that adapts. So they actually need pressure to get better. And so, I was thinking like probably jujitsu is that sort of system. Is that, and of course, not too much pressure. Like if a meteorite hits, then the ecosystem will collapse, obviously. But just enough pressure on it will make it improve. So that's his philosophy, and he's against sort of intervention by central banks or intervention by people or intervention by doctors. He's not totally against it, but he's just suspicious of when people try to intervene and support something, because he's a big believer that they're systems that have been around for a long time, and stress will assist it. Like he does a lot of. He's funny because he's a big sort of clumsy looking bloke, but he does a lot of like heavy deadlifts because it's a lot of pressure on the body, and he thinks that's how it's healthiest. But yeah, just that jujitsu is a system, um, which gains from pressure and disorder rather than, um, like if something's fragile, and you apply stress to it, it breaks. And he says, well, what's the opposite of fragile? And most people say robust. Well, no, because something fragile, when you stress it, will break into pieces and disorder. Robust will stay the same. Anti-fragile will get better. So, we anyone that does jiu-jitsu will sort of understand that stress and pressure at the right levels will make you better.
It's what we were saying before as well, right? Like the difference between how much pressure do you want to put to the point where you can be challenged and grow rather than and not break.
Mm.
Um,
But also, if
yeah.
you're not put under pressure, you're not going to get better.
Uh huh. And that's then up to your teammates as well, and kind of working on, okay, how much pressure should I give in this situation? And it's also the decisions that you make, like all the time during the grapples to determine, should I push harder here or should I adapt and go to a different position or, you know, um, yeah, that's really, really cool.
Hey, you're just talking about
Um,
adaptation just then, and people saying like, it's adaptation, but isn't jujitsu also about having boundaries as well, and not adapting? Like there's two in life. You've got to be adaptable, but you also got to have boundaries. Like sometimes I think I'm just too adaptable, and I haven't got really strong enough boundaries. But in guard, right, or pinning someone,
so you want to be more robust.
well, I don't want them to adapt. But there's a lot of talk in jiu-jitsu about being adaptable, but there's times when you just, if you're in closed guard, you want to hold someone there, and you want a boundary, and you don't want any transgression across that boundary as well. So yeah, I think adaption's a fairly easy idea in jiu-jitsu, but also it can teach you the value of having boundaries too, because you don't want to adapt to everything.
Is it? Yeah, I guess you can like, well, you don't want to go into any very dangerous territory, I guess, without a plan. So whether the like what's incoming is good or bad for you, I guess you have to adapt and like respond to it. But responding isn't necessarily is a response an adaptation. Like, is it the same thing?
Or maybe you just don't want, like, if you've got someone in mount, you just want that to be mount. I understand you'd be going for chokes and stuff, and that can be the adaptation part. But when you're on mount, there's a part of you that just says no. There's no movement. There's no adaptation. You're staying here.
Yes. At the same time, if you don't let the person move and you kind of create like a situation of it being static, then how are you going to progress as well? So you might want to pretend like you're adapting so the person can keep moving,
Mm.
and that's how you're going to ping the guy. So I guess there's a facade there. So sometimes I guess you're adapting, but you also want your opponent to think that you're adapting in one way so they can go that way, but then you're instead going the other way, and that's going to lead to his or her demise. So, um, is there any way that you cannot adapt to a changing situation? You can bring it back, but is to bring it back. So let's say the guy tries to elbow escape, and I get a frog foot, and I reel him back
Mm.
up and get him back onto his back. I'm still adapting there, but in a way that suits me more than what it does him
Yeah,
or her.
yeah, definitely. I was just thinking maybe that even like with a boundary, it just doesn't allow change. It doesn't allow adaptation to come into it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain amount of that in, say, closed guard, even, right? You've got them in closed guard, and there's a certain amount of no. There's no change in this part. There's change in other parts, but in this part, there's no change.
You will stay here.
Yeah, there's no adaptation to be had because there's not going to be any change.
Yep, I like it. Oh man, so how much do you miss jiu-jitsu now, Lukey?
Yeah, a lot. Um,
Here's a question. What do you miss most about it?
oh, just that feeling of being a kid again. You know, just 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 wrestling like a kid. Just the fun of it, and the way I feel after I've had a proper good workout. Um, and just how it makes my mind and body feel. I feel very relaxed and clean afterwards, and yeah, I just feel like I'm on a high. So that's what I miss.
Is there are you finding that during this lockdown? Are you finding anything kind of that gets close to it? Is there anything kind of that challenges you the way jiu-jitsu does, that gives you those feelings, those cuddly feelings?
Oh, I guess I no because well there are other things that make me feel other ways that are great, right? And are very very satisfied and happy and all that sort of stuff. Um, but I don't have anything that kind of ticks the boxes like that. I guess it would have been like I used to surf, so um, that was something that you could go out, you forget about the world. It'd be a fantastic exercise, and you know, but it's cold. um, yeah, and it's a tough sport. It's requires a lot of fitness and strength, and so you know um, you got to. Well, I'd have to sort of get back into it, make a commitment, and I'm kind of it's the lockdown's going to end. The lockdown's going to end. I'm going to get back to my jiu-jitsu. So
Yeah,
bit of I haven't been motivated to do it. If I had have, I'm sure it would have been a good thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I haven't, mate.
And there's sharks in the ocean too, so you can't choke out those things.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you said in the news today,
Yeah, that was
so
very sad. I
killed,
saw
yeah,
that.
up at Coffs Harbour.
Um,
But
very sad.
mm.
All right, last question. This is like a bit of a typical one, but needs to be asked. If somebody your age, let's say, was on the fence about getting started, what would you say to them?
I'd say um, it's a great thing to start, um, but because you're older, you've got to really use your head and understand a bit quicker than most about how to train properly. So if you're a bit older, you're supposedly a little bit wiser, probably because you have to
Mm.
be, you know. Um, you just can't sort of throw it into fifth and chuck it around a bend, but just really understand the concepts of training smart, quicker. You know, it's a great sport. You'll feel you'll feel better than you have. Um, it will make you feel healthier. It won't be a question of you might get unlucky, you might get a little bit injured, but you can do that doing yoga. You know, um, but you will definitely benefit from it. Your mobility will increase, your health will increase, your outlook will increase. Um, but if you go out there and you try and throw down with the youngins, you're going to get discouraged because they'll you will get gassed, and that can be And I certainly have had my moments of being sort of a little bit demoralised because of that. And if you go in and you start getting demoralised, well, you're not going to go anywhere. But you just got to trust that you can get round that. And if you learn the techniques and you persist with the curriculum and with what is being taught at Higher Jiu Jitsu, you will succeed. Um, you'll get much better. You'll get just as good as everyone else. You won't get as fast as everyone else and have the same cardio as everyone else, but you'll enjoy it. Just be smart.
Just be smart. I think that's a good one. I think that's a good place to leave it there, Lukey. Hey, man. Thank you so much for doing this, for coming on,
Thanks for having me.
for supporting the school and being a part of the school. You're a legend. It's good to train with you. I miss our sessions on a Friday morning, but we'll be back, Lukey. We'll be back, man.
Yeah, we will.
For now, thanks, buddy.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Cheers. Thanks, Johnny.
All the best, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.